So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, it does look like that Terence Bud Crawford could potentially be fighting Shawn Porter. He's being called out by Shawn Porter for a May fight. And as you guys would know, a lot's been going on between them. A lot's being said. Lots been happening. I would love to see a Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter fight. I think it's a great fight. I think it would be a great fight between two top welterweights. And I think it would be a fight where if Terence Crawford wins handily, I think people will finally say that, wow, he just beat a top welterweight. And let's not forget, Shawn Porter recently fought Errol Spence in a life and death fight for Spence, really. A lot of people thought Spence was lucky to get that decision. And maybe the knockdown in the 11th, tipped it towards Spence in Spence's favor. However, what I will say is that I think this fight would be a real fight. And actually, you know what? When you look at it stylistically, you think Shawn Porter might be able to cause Terence Crawford some problems because, he's very strong. He's big at the weight. He's very tough. He's not the tallest. And then Terence Crawford is very langly, very long. Terence Crawford is just a master boxer. And I think Terence Crawford would or should pick Shawn Porter apart. However, this would be a very tough fight because, like I said, Shawn Porter's never been in a fight where he's been dominated by anybody. Nobody's managed to dominate Shawn Porter when he fought Thurman, when he fought Brook, when he fought Errol Spence. And all of those fights, you could say, were very close. Very, very close. And you could have easily seen any of those fights go the other way. The Brook fight could have easily, that was his first loss, I believe. That could have easily gone in Porter's favor. Let's not forget the UK broadcaster had Kell Brook down in that fight. In the Keith Thurman fight, that I believe was a split decision. Again, I felt Thurman was hanging on a bit, in few rounds. I think round 8 or 7, Thurman was in big, big trouble. So again, I do think that, Shawn Porter in that fight could have potentially got the decision. However, I do think Keith Thurman nicked that fight. Then Shawn Porter fought Danny Garcia and he finally managed to get a win in a close fight. And I actually thought he lost that one. I actually thought he lost that fight against Danny Garcia. I thought he was fortunate to get that decision. But I think Danny Garcia's law of averages ran out because a lot of his fights were very close. I thought Garcia lost to Peterson. I thought Garcia lost to Herrera. And I thought Garcia was very lucky to get those decisions. So that's what I mean when I say I think his law of averages ran out against Thurman and Porter when his team felt, his dad felt that he should have got the decision. But really, when you think about it, a lot of Garcia had a few really, I think, in my opinion, some decisions that really went for him that I didn't think he deserved. And then Shawn Porter fought Errol Spence, which was a cracking fight. That was a proper fight. It was an absolute war. It was a war. It was a brilliant fight. And to be honest with you, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that fight. I was really impressed with Shawn Porter in that fight. I thought Shawn Porter was brilliant. Porter was brilliant in that fight. And really, if I'm honest with you, I think he deserves something from that fight. I don't think Spence, you could say, I think Spence, being the politically more connected fighter, probably got the nod. But again, he did get a conclusive moment in the fight, which was the knockdown. So, it wasn't a robbery. It was no way a robbery. If you could have it either way. If it was a draw, I wouldn't have been crying. The fact that Spence, personally, I had it a draw. But again, it's one of those, like, you can't cry robbery or either way. If it had gone either way, you can't say, well, it was a robbery because it was close. Let's be honest, it was a close fight. It was a great fight between, in my opinion, two great fighters and two guys that put it on the line. And I personally think that Shawn Porter was unlucky in that fight. But again, when Shawn Porter fought Ugas, I thought Shawn Porter lost that fight. So at the end of the day, these things even themselves out. But Shawn Porter is the kind of guy where he never really dominates anyone at that kind of level. But he manages to make the fight very interesting no matter who he gets in the ring with. Maybe because his style is so awkward. He's so physically strong. He's so relentless. You know, putting a lot of pressure on you. Technically not the greatest. So at times he's very wild with his punches. And he doesn't look pretty to the eye. He's not what I would call a very good technical boxer, but he's just got that. Like Maidana. Maidana was a bigger puncher than Porter. And Maidana was probably a little bit more wild than Porter. But Maidana for me was very strong, and Maidana was a bigger puncher, and probably maybe even physically stronger. That fight would have been an absolute war if Maidana had fought Porter. What a fight that would have been. But yeah, if we go back to Crawford Porter, I think this fight would be a great fight because Terence Crawford could potentially do something that no one's done in the welterweight division to Shawn Porter. If Terence Crawford could potentially separate himself from the bunch in the sense that dismantle Shawn Porter, potentially stop him, or, which I think is going to be very difficult to do because Shawn Porter's tough as nails, or outclass Shawn Porter in a way where he beats him easy and makes it look easy. Crawford is going to show that he's an elite welterweight and he's a guy that pound for pound status that a lot of people question because of his resume can be put to one side. Because if he goes in there, and I even think if he beats Shawn Porter, and that's why I said I would prefer Thurman. But if he beats Shawn Porter emphatically, right? Terence Crawford, there's no doubt, and no one can argue after that. If you do, you're just a hater. That Terence Crawford is a legit top welterweight. Personally, I think he is already. I think his wins over Khan and Brook were quite good. And to be honest, I know those guys weren't in their prime and they were past their prime. However, the fact of the matter is the fact that Khan and Brook could probably give Thurman still a very tough fight. Right? And even give Porter, they could probably give Porter a good fight. And these are the guys that we want to see Terence Crawford against. But Terence just completely outclassed them. And he beat him up, Kell Brook just got completely wiped out. Amir Khan got, lost most of the rounds, Khan did. And who does Khan really lose rounds against? Very difficult to win rounds against Khan, right? And Terence Crawford was doing it from a boxing sense. I know it's not the vintage prime Khan, but still it was a great performance, and he dominated the fight, Crawford. So what I'm trying to point out is if he can dominate against Shawn Porter, right? Then Terence Crawford, there's no doubt in my mind that this guy would have proven that if he dominates Shawn Porter, he is the number one welterweight in the world. If he goes in there and dominates him, because let's be honest, Spence struggled against Porter. I call it real. And I think Spence beats Crawford. I might be wrong, right? But if he goes in there and dominates Shawn Porter, if Crawford goes in there and dominates Shawn Porter, then for me, you have to say that Crawford is the number one welterweight in the world. I know people will say until he fights Spence. Yeah, fair enough. But if he dominates Shawn Porter, something that no one's been able to do, I'm talking true welterweights haven't been able to do. Like Spence, like Thurman, like Brook, who are big welterweights, couldn't dominate him. If Terence Crawford, the guy that's moved up from lightweight, dominates Shawn Porter at a stage in Shawn Porter's career where he's looking good right now, then Terence Crawford is the number one welterweight in the world. See, right now, for me, it's up for debate because people will talk about Crawford's resume and they will talk about other things. Fair enough. But if he dominates Shawn Porter, for me, there's no doubt. For me, there's no doubt he is by far the number one welterweight. And if you disagree, then you're probably a guy with an agenda. You're probably a Spence fan, or you're probably just a guy that's looking to hate on Crawford, because I don't think there will be any question if he was to dominate Shawn Porter, because like I said, nobody's been able to do that. And Terence Crawford, since he's moved up to welterweight, all he's been doing is dominating. He's dominated all his fights. People may say, well, he's dominated all his fights. The guys that he got in the ring with weren't that easy. That people, that he could do that. Jeff Horn had a very tough fight with Manny Pacquiao. Yes, Manny Pacquiao, most people thought he won. Yes, but the fight was tough. Crawford washed him, right? And the other fights that he's had as well, Crawford won them comfortably. So, like I said, if he beats Shawn Porter and I think this is I think personally I would prefer Thurman, but I think it would be a great fight for Terence Crawford to make a statement in the welterweight division. Make a statement. How many losses has Porter got now? Has he got 4? I think he's got 4 losses. He should have 5 because I thought he lost to Ugas. Personally, I think the Ugas fight would be better. I think Ugas personally is technically better. And Crawford should win that fight as well against Ugas. But it's for a belt. Crawford becomes a unified champion if he wins that fight. So if I was Crawford, I'd look to target Ugas just so then he could get that belt. Then Spence can't say that he's the guy with 2 or 3 belts. Crawford could have the other belt as well. So that's why I'd target Ugas as well if I was Crawford. But I don't think Crawford has got that kind of pulling power where, I think the Spence fight for Ugas would be a lot more money and a bigger fight. Whereas a Crawford fight, because of Crawford's lack of appeal, Crawford won't be able to attract Ugas for a fight. So I think the fight that fight is probably unlikely to happen. So I think the Porter fight is a fight that makes sense. I think Crawford's credibility, especially if he doesn't look good and he has a tough fight with Porter, then it doesn't do anything because his performance would just be like the others. If he goes in there and dominates, then obviously he would have separated himself from the lot. If he loses, then obviously people are going to question his legitimacy as a fighter, and they're going to say, oh, well, he was fighting bums, and that's why he was winning. Otherwise, now he stepped up and fought a true fight. He lost. You see, people are always looking for an opportunity with Crawford. So as soon as he slips up once, if he does, he may never slip up. You know what people are going to say. So Crawford has to be on his A game. He has to be on his A game all the time because the haters and the critics are there waiting to hate on Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, for me, is one of the best fighters in the world. And Terence Crawford, for me, if he was to fight Shawn Porter, wins. And I'll say this. I think Terence Crawford would separate himself from the lot. And I think Terence Crawford would beat Shawn Porter in emphatic fashion. I might be wrong. I think Terence Crawford will separate himself from the lot. And I think Terence Crawford will school. I think Terence Crawford's got more levels, more tools to him than the rest of the guys and then that fought him. And I think Terence Crawford will show why he's an elite fighter. But again, it's a great fight. It would be a great fight, and it would be an opportunity for Terence Crawford to prove why he's next level. Because Porter, you'd have to say, would be his toughest fight, right? It'd definitely be his toughest fight. So for me, it's a must-do fight for Crawford. Crawford's not in a position right now where he can call shots in terms of who he's fighting. He just needs to get in with the best ranked guy or the best welterweight he can get in the ring right now. And the best welterweight in the ring that wants to get in the ring with him is Shawn Porter. I think Shawn Porter, because Shawn Porter's got a few losses on his record. He's got how many? He's got 3. No, Shawn Porter hasn't lost 4 times. He's lost 3 times. Brooke, Spence, and Thurman. So for Porter, he's got losses on his record. For him, it's just about fighting the best and see if he can become world champion again. He's a trier. He wants to keep, win. He wants to win another world title. So, and I don't think he's ever won the WBO. I think he's had the IBF and the WBC. So this is an opportunity for him to win the WBO. So yeah, leave your thoughts, guys. It's a great fight. Terence Crawford is called out by Shawn Porter. Who do you think wins the fight? I think Terence Crawford beats him. Leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you're thinking, guys. Remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.